doing that, I was face to face with it. It was holding me by my throat, and it felt like it was sucking something out of me.
I probably should have been more scared than I was when I witnessed the exorcism.
I turned and looked on my right side. When I did, there's a beam on the side of the tree, a large beam. It's looking at me and I'm looking at it.
After I hit the lock button and looked back up, I saw red eyes staring back at me.
That they're going to show multiple gods all over the earth, be able to speak in people's languages, and at that point, it kind of converge into this one entity, which will be revealed as extraterrestrial. You'll realize that aliens are the gods of old, and at that point, it'll wipe religion out of the context of humanity.
No, it couldn't have been a person, I know that. I know that people can't run through the woods like that.
So this thing comes into view, and I see it. It's 50 yards away from me. It's walking on two legs. It's huge. This is a big, hairy-looking being.
Welcome. I'm your host, and this is uNcomfortable. Welcome back to the show, my friends. I am your host, Eric Szilagyi. If you've had an uncomfortable experience and you'd like to have it featured on the show, please get a hold of me at contact.uncomfortable@gmail.com. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, both at Uncomfortable Podcast 65. Most importantly, please share the show with others and make sure to leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you can. That is the main way that you can help in getting this show out in front of more people. The Uncomfortable Patreon is live, so if you've been interested in helping support the show and receive some extra content and perks in the process, Patreon may be right for you. It is the home to all Uncomfortable episodes, ad-free, at every membership level. And it's the only place you can find the video series A Little Uncomfortable and Uncomfortable Afterthoughts at the mid and top tier levels. Please go to patreon.com/uncomfortablepodcast770 and see if any of the content levels interest you there. That being said, let's shout out to our newest Patreon members, Larissa Hatch, Vanessa Preble, Ashley, Bud Schuler, Rosemary Chives, and Alan Smith. Thank you so much for the support, guys. You have no idea how much it is appreciated and how valued you are in this community. My heartfelt thanks goes out to each and every one of you for supporting the show and what I am doing here. You can also support at redcircle.com/uncomfortable/donations, which I didn't even really know about until a couple of weeks ago when one of our Discord members found it and took advantage of it that way as well. The links for the Patreon page, Red Circle, and Discord server will be in the show notes below. Tonight's guest comes to us practically from a world away, a land that has brought us Vegemite and koalas, kangaroos, and AC/DC. Ladies and gentlemen, Creepy Australia is being represented here tonight for the first time. So, if you're ready for some down under paranormal, let's get into it. So if you will, please give a warm, uncomfortable welcome to Mr. Rob Wilcox. Rob, welcome to Uncomfortable.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us from down under, way, way away from all of us down there in Australia. Hey,
All the way out the other side of the pond.
Yeah, I would say a good stone's throw on the other side of the pond. First of all, I got to say that my younger years, during the time that I still listen to loud music, but some Australian bands were in rotation on a regular basis in my car, whether it be on cassette tape or CD. In Excess, Midnight Oil, those were some heavily played bands back in the day for me. So
the classics,
very much so. Yeah, what a tragedy about Michael Hutchence. That was a band that kind of snuck up on me. You know, at first I thought it was kind of a one night, overnight sensation. Pop band was going to burn out rather quickly, and man, they just continued to get better and better with each album that they came out with, and they had a great library of work. It would have been incredible to see had he progressed where they would have went with that. So
most definitely, yeah. And then to end it like that was
unfortunate, but.
Yeah,
once you learn the details of it, that was a pretty messed up triangle he was in. So, but anyway, it's great to have you here. You surprised the hell out of me the other night. About a week ago when you popped into my Discord, and man, it's a really neat aspect to doing what I do is getting to talk to people from all the way around the world. For over 2 years now, when I check my analytics for the podcast, as far as seeing the demographic of who's listening to it, obviously the U.S. is probably far and away the largest demographic at about 80%. But the UK, Australia, man, they're right there in 2 and 3. So it's really unique feeling to know that there's people on the other side of the world that are listening to what I do. It's kind of a tough one to wrap my head around, but it's amazing. It really is.
It just goes to show the credit you got, mate, and the reach that you can get.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun getting to talk to. In fact, last night's Discord, you were in there for a while as well, and I don't know if this was after you had left or not, but a listener from Sweden came in. So everybody got to get a crash course in what it's like to live over there in Gallivare, Sweden. So, my friend,
apparently they got one of the best countries going for.
I tell you what,
taxes and that.
Yeah, I tell you, there's a lot less wrong over there than there seems to be closer to home.
Yes,
and
definitely.
we started talking about, I'm a firm believer in being able to own guns. I've grown up with guns. I have guns. I'm a very normal person. I don't walk around waving it in the air and, trying to scare people or shoot at people. But over there, just to be able to hunt, just to be able to have a shotgun, you have to go through 7 months of schooling, and then you have to be able to test into getting the license to have that weapon. And then every year you have to go back and you have to test again, because they want to ensure that the people that have those licenses, that their eyesight and their accuracy is still within a measurable unit of being agreeable. Those are very common sense things to me. It's like, I don't understand why we don't adopt that. And then of course,
I'd take that on for sure in Australia, because tough here to get guns too.
Yeah. And then he was saying his dad also hunts elk, and he uses a 30-06. He has to go and do an additional class for that other weapon, and then he has to test each year for his accuracy with that before he's given the license again. So, that's some pretty common sense stuff. I think everybody ought to adopt that. And then, the handgun thing, I would hate that anybody would take away my handgun. But if you could guarantee me that you could take everyone's handguns, if you could eliminate handguns and get them out of the hands of everyone, good and bad, I'd gladly give it up.
Well, that's it. The gun laws only affect the law-abiding citizens.
Indeed. But that's not why we're here to talk, is it? We're here to talk about some paranormal aspects to your life over there in Australia. And I know that during our first conversation, I asked about Bigfoot or over there, the Yowie, and you'd not had any experiences about that, which was unfortunate because I'd love to hear what the take is on that creature over there. But you've had some other things that are pretty notable. So if you will, why don't you start off at the beginning and tell us what's been going on there?
No worries. So yeah, it started. Well, I always used to say that it started around 9 or 10 years old. So what I can remember first off was I was up one night watching basketball with my brother, and got to 11:30, 12 o'clock or something, and he's like, "Oh, you better go to bed just in case Mum wakes up." So I ran off to bed and laying there. We had one of those old angle iron beds with springs and the wire sort of mesh thing, and underneath me bed, because my mum was a bit of a hoarder, she there was boxes and suitcases from the daughter's stuff, and so between the top of the mattress, or the bottom of the mattress, sorry, and the top of the stuff under my bed, there was probably 2 or 3 inches, so nothing could get under there. So I've gone to bed laying there, and next minute the middle of the bed rises up as high as the springs and all that would let it, and then just falls completely down and smacks onto the stuff underneath the bed. So I was laying there, eyes wide open,
So the bed lifted completely up.
Yeah, not just what I was laying on, up and then bang is and from where I was laying, I could see the hallway light from my bed, and probably not 5 minutes later, my brother's walked up, and my eyes are apparently that wide open that he could see the reflection of the light off my eyeballs and come in and ask if I was all right. Told him what happened, and he seemed a bit, oh yeah, righto, but he had a look under the bed. Nothing there, nothing moved. And if anyone was going to lay under the bed, there would have been a whole heap of stuff out on the floor to get under there. So, yeah, that was the first one.
So let me get this straight. It was almost as if somebody was underneath the bed and just pushed up on the portion of the bed that you were laying on, like lifted your weight, your body weight up, and then let it slam down.
Yeah, little pretty much straight underneath, like where my tailbone is. Just lifted that up and then let it drop.
Wow.
Yeah,
that had to been a restless night of sleep for you.
Yeah, I don't remember much after that. It's just that happened, and yeah, this was a long time ago now. The next one was far worse, though. So that was about 9 or 10. And then somewhere around 10 or 11, I started getting dreams of being chased by a faceless father. Never knew my dad, so was always faceless. And he'd always chase me around the house. Sometimes he'd, have a weapon in his hand. Sometimes he wouldn't. And he was chasing me on this one vivid one that I remember, chasing me what seemed like, for an hour. And as dreams go, you end up in one spot to the next. Well, he was chasing me. I remember running out the front yard and jumped in my mum's car. And then he was at the back door grabbing on my ankles, trying to drag me away. I'm holding on to the door handle on the inside of the car, holding onto the door handle, doors open. He's pulling and dragging. I'm screaming, kicking and flailing. And next minute, I'm dropped. Well, I woke up and I was out of my bed, and it turns out that what I was holding on to in real life, where, you know, I'm in the dream, I'm holding on to the door. In real life, I was holding on to the edge of my bed, and I was dropped and landed in the middle of the floor. I was screaming. My mum wakes up. She comes in. I'm in the middle of my bedroom floor in a blubbering mess, shaken, white as a ghost. No pun intended. But yeah, so
something was actually physically pulling you out of your bed.
Yes, yeah. That's the only thing I can put it to, because yeah, the mum said she heard a bang. And then, not, 15 seconds after the bang, I was screaming when I woke up.
What can you give me a description of what your faceless father looked like? I mean, was his clothing? Were you able to tell? Were there colors to his clothes, or was he completely black?
Shirt, No, like I could see brown hair, like skin features, like he had a face, but there was just no features to it. It was just skin color.
Oh.
That's
even creepier.
Yeah, especially when you're about 10 years old. Yeah.
Did you have a conversation with your mom at all about this? Telling her, letting her know that the figure that was in the dream that you felt was after you was what you thought was your father, even though you had not known?
Yeah.
She
just did the mother thing, Oh, it's just a dream. You'll be fine, rah, rah. But couldn't explain why I woke up in the middle of my room.
So when you described him to her, you didn't recognize that it maybe gave her pause or anything, like you had been.
It had been. So as soon as he found out that she was pregnant, he did the Harold Holt and took the bolt.
So it had been 10
years. It had been 10 years since she had seen him, so.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry that you went through that, both you and your mom. But that's a creepy thing to, dreams are dreams, and a lot of things can be inferred from what somebody experiences in a dream. That's why there's thousands of books out there of how to interpret your dreams. And usually when you start delving into that and you see what the interpretation of something is, it's usually not, it's not the face value of what you felt you saw. But in your case, actually having been pulled out of the bed and holding on to it, that to me is might indicate that there was something else going on there.
Yeah. So I for the longest time I've said that, it feels like there's something negative always, 10 steps behind me. And I put that down to he's not happy. Whether it's, yeah, I kind of just gave stuff away then. But yeah, no, it'll all come to play very soon. I've finally figured it all out.
Have you?
Yeah. So we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
There's a few more things to come.
All right.
So at 11 or 12 is when I had my first pet that passed away, Girly. She was the family lab, and she had to be put down due to old age. And, she come in, she was big black lab, long-haired, and not long after she passed away, I heard a noise in my room, and I, look up, and I didn't feel it jump on the bed, but I seen this black shadow, hop off the bed and walk out the door. And my first instinct was that was Girly. A lot of people would have been like, oh my God, black shadow, that's demons, but no.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think it is. I think you know, and I think the natural jump is for people because when we associate something black, we associate it with being something bad.
Exactly.
And I don't think that's necessarily true in all cases. You know, it's funny how many times I've heard of people being visited by former pets, you know, and it's all very, very similar to what you're saying, you know, pretty unobtrusive. They just kind of either jump up onto a pillow or jump up onto the bed. I was telling you before we started recording, walking into the one bedroom that my mom had kept all of her supplies and stuff in. I had just pretty much closed the door because I didn't want to look at it and have to deal with trying to figure out how I was going to get all that stuff out of here. And one day I had to go in there and look for something, and I walked in maybe 2 steps, and a cat meowed at me. And it literally took me off guard so quickly that I looked down to the floor at the right of my right foot, because I fully expected to see a cat sitting there. And my mom had cats. They had all passed by this time, and my mom had passed as well. And that was a very strange thing, you know. I mean, I've had a lot of experiences in my life, but that was strange. Another gentleman I talked to, I believe he went by the name Joey. He had some military experience and stuff, and he felt his dog walk up to sit down right beside where he was sitting, and the big sigh when he hit the ground, and you know, it's just it's a strange thing. I even talked to a woman who had a pet that died in a really not a very nice way, but she used to, as a child, do this weird little, she didn't realize it, but it was, I guess we would consider it to be some kind of little ritual, and the dog would come visit her in its afterlife form. So it's a very common thing. You would not think. I think it's because we're so predisposed to thinking that anything that comes back to engage with us from beyond death is usually something that we consider to have a soul. And I don't think a lot of people entertain the idea that our dogs or our cats have souls. And I don't think that's true. I think that I think they do.
Well, you can definitely tell just sitting there looking into their eyes, you know, there's
Absolutely.
a lot more going on than what we think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that was a quick one. She was, you know, just checking up, telling me that she was all right pretty much. Yeah, that one wasn't scary at all. That was in and out, and I told my mum the next day.
Is this all in the same house?
Yep.
Yeah.
So my mum was in the same house for about 40 years.
Okay.
So I was born and raised there. I moved away, I come back. I moved away, I come back. It's yeah. This house is.
You're in it now.
No.
Oh.
I'm 5 minutes away from it now. So yeah. So that was that was that one. So at 12ish, I had friends down the road. You know, I'd known them. One of the boys I'd known since I was 3 years old. We were about 11 or 12 maybe. And he had an older brother. And they wanted to do a seance. And I'm a big no-no on seances. Just with the feeling that I feel if I was able to touch a seance board or a Ouija board, do a seance, that some not very nice things knocking at the door waiting to get through. So I do not like them. So I sat in the room while they were doing it. And there was 4, 5 maybe that were, all sitting around on a homemade bloody, Ouija board with a shot glasses, a planchette. And, they're all joking, laughing. And next minute, the entire lounge room, we're in the lounge room. I could see the hallway behind some of them. The entire lounge room, the hallway, and the kitchen lights up red, big flash of red. And down the hallway, I'm getting goosebumps now, just reliving it. Down the hallway, I see the biggest figure that I've ever seen. When I mean big, like, you know, if you imagine a hallway, I think they're 5 feet wide. Well, this thing was all of everything of, you know, 4.8 feet wide by, you know, a good 6.5 foot tall.
Okay.
Like, it just indoor, like, it swallowed the whole, and it walked down the hallway. Nothing too bad. Like, you know, it was just that flash of red, big thing walking down the hallway. And I'm pretty sure I got scared and ran home because I was about 3 houses away from home. So,
what can you describe this thing? I mean, obviously immense in size, but did it look human? Was it just a blocked out?
Just a very, very large human shape. Like, there was no horns or nothing. Like, just tattered clothes. Like, you know, sort of, you think to, like, you know, Hulk-esque, where it's ripped off of him. Mm-hmm. Just tattered, torn. Yeah, and just a very slow, like, you know, menacing walk down the hallway. But there was no noise to it. There was no, you know, footsteps. There was... Yeah, so
you said something that interested me. Even at what you said, 12 years old at this point, 12 or 13, that you're doing the seance. What you said, unless I misinterpreted it wrong, were you kind of aware that there was something maybe on the darker side of things that kind of followed you or was around you?
Yes.
Even at that early of an age, you were
I didn't touch that board. To get me to touch that board, you probably would have had to have knocked me out and, you know, physically done it. Like, there was no way I was ever, and still now, I never will.
I won't do it. I won't do anything with a Ouija board. I've talked to a number of people that say they're perfectly safe. I've talked to a number of people that said as long as you open it correctly and you close it correctly, there's nothing that can go wrong. There is something inherently keeping me from participating in that. I won't do it.
Yeah, I'm the same. For me, like, even now, you know, it just seems like there is a doorway there, and I don't know whether it's one or if it's 100, but there is, you know, something not nice that is, you know, just waiting and hoping that I go and touch one and give it that access.
Is this something the reasoning behind that? Is that something you're going to get into later, or?
That's just it. That's just a feeling I have for that specific thing. It, you know, could come to play with something later. I'm not too sure. So we'll continue, and then we'll get to that, and we can discuss.
Okay.
So yeah, that was the seance. And then 13, over here we start high school at 13. Well, we used to. Sorry, grade 8 was high school. And along come with high school was the great old depression. So I got depression and it hit me hard. Started, hard time sleeping. Like, I'd go to sleep at 3 a.m. Mum would try and wake me up for school at, 7:30. Didn't want to do it. And while laying there, everything was against me. Hated everything, the typical. So I'm laying in bed in the same bedroom as where I was, dragged from. But my bed was on the other side of the wall at this stage. Laying there, and it felt like there was, a bug or, something in my hair. And at 13, my nana had died too. I wasn't overly close with Nana. She suffered from dementia as well. But yeah. So I thought it was a bug, and I did as everyone do, swipe, whether it was like we've got, huntsmans here, which are very friendly little critters who will crawl everywhere they can. So I thought, could have been a huntsman or something in my hair, kept swapping at it. About 10, 15 seconds, it'd be back. Just swiping it again. I got up and I turned my light on, looking around, nothing there. Turn the light off, jump back in bed. About 15 seconds later, the same thing. So I've laid there and I'm like, wait, that's not, it's the same direction. It's the same pattern. And I put it down to, that was my Nana stroking my hair, trying to calm me down, as you do with kids, you stroke their hair, they fall asleep.
Try to give you comfort.
And once I'd realised that it wasn't, something in my hair and I got that comfort, within about a minute I was asleep.
Really?
Which was very uncanny. And that happened for, wasn't every night, but on the nights where it was, the depression was the worst. And I, I'd get that. So whether it was Nan or Pop, because, I never got to meet my Pop. He died 7 years before I was born due to stomach cancer. So, but I always, I've always had the feeling like they're behind me. They're like sort of watching over me. So yeah, was either one of them, but they were there comforting me, and it helped.
Well, that's a nice takeaway from that. I've talked about this in other shows. Not everything is dark and bad. Not everything that reaches out from beyond the veil is something that we need to be terrified of and fear. That comfort. I mean, that was a timely gift for you to help you get through that part of your life.
And that was 25 years ago, and I still remember it like it was yesterday.
That's the other striking thing about it is when you have an experience like that stays with you. That to me creates some legitimacy in that it actually happened. We experience things every day of our life, and they don't always stay with us. But when you have an experience like that and it sticks with you, I think that's a pretty good indicator that you were on the right track.
Yeah, I like to believe so. So the same bedroom, probably around the same year. My brother's dog, who he had gotten. So my brother got this Staffordshire Bull Terrier, and he was a monster of a thing. He was a roo dog. So an old farmer, out west used to sit on his veranda, and he'd pluck off a kangaroo, and Turk would be sitting beside him, and he'd tell Turk, go get it. Turk would run out and grab the roo that he had just shot by the tail and drag it back up to the stairs. Old farmer would chop the tail in half, give him half a raw roo tail, and then cook the other half. One day he's told Turk to go get it, and Turk didn't move. He told him again, nothing happened. Told him 3 times. After the 3rd time the Turk not moving, didn't go and get the roo. He's put him in a cage, and he just so happened to ring the next door neighbour to us and said, in farm life though, he said, if you know anyone that wants a dog, come and get it. If not, I'm going to shoot it because it's not doing its job.
Oh shit.
So yeah, that's farm. If you're not working, you're taking up a space that some other working dog can.
Yeah.
I would have a hard time shooting something that,
Sure.
you put all that time and effort into, but that's the way it is. So the neighbours come over and ask me, brother, you want a dog? And he's like, yeah, sweet. So yeah, they go out and pick it up, and, dragging kangaroos, who are dense, solid masses, this thing was a monster. Like, you know, huge, big jaw muscles, big shoulders. And when he come back, he stuck his head out the car window, and, you know, my mum shit herself. She's like, no way. We had 2 hours. And, you know, he was a roo dog. We had 2 hours. She's thinking, oh, he's just going to eat these 2 hours. But no, not the case. And he was with us for a short time. Turns out the reason he didn't move was because he had bowel cancer.
Oh.
So my brother got him, you know, great dog. I think we had him for, you know, a couple of years. Yeah, about 13, 14 when he passed away. Had to get him put down because it just got too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so every so often when he was alive, Turk used to come and jump up on my bed, and, you know, he'd curl up in the lap part as I was laying on my side. And about 14 years old, I'd say I was, 13 maybe, he'd passed, and I literally felt the bed sag, and the springs made all the noises, and then I felt him curl up, and he wasn't a small dog, so, you know, he always used to sort of push and just shove his way into where he was going.
Yeah.
And in the afterlife, he did the same thing. Like, I felt him curl up and lay down, and I've, like, opened my eyes, seen, like, you know, sort of a black mist, because, again, he was a black dog. Yeah, curl up, lay there, didn't move, and I fell asleep like that. And everything was so similar, like, you know, the weight, the amount the bed sagged, you know, the weight and the feel. It was the only thing that could have been was Turk.
Hey, there's something about this house that you were living in at the time that I hope you address here at some point after you get through these things, because it certainly seems that there's that's got to be a key to some of this.
I don't know. Like, this is just a house I grew up in. That's, yeah. I don't know if it's the house or if it's me. Because I got a few more experiences in this house. And then we go to other houses when I sort of grow up and move away.
Okay.
So, yeah, that was that one. So, as I said, we had 2 hours. Now, me and the next door neighbour, like, I was lucky. My mum and the next door neighbour lived beside each other for 30 years. So it was like a second family next door. So we had a 2 hour called Lexi, and they had a 2 hour called Taffy. But Taffy wanted to be at our house and Lexi wanted to be over there. So pretty much nightly, we would be, you know, at the fence line swapping dogs back. Like, yep, here's your dog. We'll take our dog. Thank you. And then pretty much first thing in the morning, as soon as the doors were open, the dogs would be, Lexi would be running next door and Taffy would be on our doorstep waiting. So Taffy pretty much turned out to be my dog. She, you know, she chose me, follow me around, and she had a tongue like a sniper, as a lot of chihuahuas do. Yeah, so her little, I think it was a brother, Sonny. I went over to next door to go and grab Sonny because he'd just go over for a visit, see all the other dogs and that. And I run him back, and it was probably, you know, 7, 8 o'clock at night. It was dark here. And I was running back, and from the corner of next door's house to the, you know, driveway on my side was probably 20 feet. And we had a chain link fence, you know, separating the two properties, but all the gates were always open for everyone's. And running past their yard coming into mine, I had Sonny behind me running with me. A frisbee smacks the dog out of nowhere, and I've stopped. You know, we're in a cul-de-sac too. You know, everyone knew everyone pretty much in the end of the street there. So Sonny's yelped and, you know, taken off upstairs, And I've gone running, you know, I was someone playing a trick, you know, nothing, no one there. Turns out it wasn't even my Frisbee. I was one of the youngest kids around, but the Frisbee wasn't mine. Don't know where the Frisbee come from. And there was no one. I went and asked everyone, you know, because the next door neighbours, they had kids, but I was, 14. They would have been late teens, early 20s. But yeah, so
the Frisbee, just no explanation for where that came from.
No, I don't know where it came from. I don't know what threw it, or, you know, but it hit me, dog. So, yeah. So that was that.
That's a different one.
Yeah. That was, and I can remember, like, you know, walking up because it was a driveway. I was walking up my driveway, and although it was dark, you know, we had the lights on from the toilet and bedrooms and that, so you could sort of see. But yeah, there was no one there. But, you know, I can remember the hairs standing up as I was walking up. So I don't know what it was, but yeah, scored a free Frisbee out of it, I suppose. So yeah, at 15, back inside at Mum's house, I you know, living in the house my whole life, I could, you know, I could walk that house in the dark or blindfolded, and so I'd wake up to go to the toilet early hours of the morning, and as you'd walk up the hallway, I used to be able to just use the moonlight, if there was moonlight, coming through the toilet window, sorry, and it'd shine through the toilet door. So I'd walk up and, you know, get the moonlight shining through the window, walk up, go to the toilet. Oh, one night, you know, walk up the hallway, turn around, see the moonlight, and just as I get to the threshold of the toilet door, toilet and bathroom separate, just as I get to the threshold, I see the moonlight, and next minute the door just gets absolutely slammed into my face. I lose the moonlight, and there's just bang, like it hits me square in the face, like I was mid-step, so it was face first. And yeah, I, you know, sort of shit myself, turn the light on, like, you know, what's going on. But yeah.
Was the window open? Could it have been a draft from a breeze that closed the door, or?
So it was one of those like fixed windows. It had the smoked pane glass, and it had like a gap of about yay far. So you had one window pane, and then the other one sat off skew to it.
Yeah.
So to get a draft, like it'd have to come up and over and back in, like it wasn't a window that you could open or close. So, yeah.
And you're putting together quite the list of things happening in this house.
Yeah, it was pretty eventful.
Okay, so you're what, probably 14 or 15 at this time?
Yeah, about 15.
What is your psyche at this point? What's Rob's brain thinking when these things are happening? Are you kind of aloof to them, or are you paying attention and thinking, okay, what's going on? Why am I having these strange things?
Oh, yeah, no, I was paying attention to them. It was I guess you could say I'm just one of those, you know, it is what it is sort of people. You know, it things happen. I take notice, but, you know, it's nothing trying to hurt me. So, you know, what was it? You know, have a look around. But yeah, I was definitely taking notice of it, and, you know, I'd talk to Mum about it, and yeah, she was couldn't really give much insight, but she knew, like we both knew that there was something else going on in the house.
She was aware of it. She had was supportive of. I mean, she wasn't dismissive of the things that you know.
Yeah, she was supportive. And it was always, you know, directed towards me. So not much happened to her. I don't think if anything happened to her. So, yeah. So around the same age, around 15, there was Taffy, the Chihuahua that I was just speaking about with the sniper tongue. She passed away. And for a good few months, you know, I'd walk up the hallway of that house and she'd be right there in the peripheral following. Sometimes you could hear her footsteps because she had a unique walk too. So on her front left paw, it was deformed and it had, like, you know, sort of clubfoot. So she had a unique pattern to her walk.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Did you actually see her?
In the peripheral, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd always look down, like, you know, like, what? But as soon as you look, you know, you turn your head, it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, that. Now this one, I was about 16. So as I said, you know, Mum's lived in this house for, well, what was I, 16? She was probably there. Mum was probably in this house for about 20 years at this stage. So I was doing the dishes, and at the house, like, you know, I'm looking out the window of the kitchen. I could see the next door neighbour's house, and I think it was vacant at the time. But I'm doing the dishes, and out of nowhere, I can hear an infant, like a baby, crying inside my head. Like, you know, and it wasn't like, you know, like, I've got kids, you've got kids. It wasn't one of those little cries of where they're hungry or, like, you know, it was one of those wailing attention.
Yeah, something's wrong.
Yeah. And I, you know, I'm just doing the dishes and I'm hearing it. And keep going. I'm like, you know, what the hell? Why? And then I figured it out that every time I looked at the house next door, the cries got louder. So I'm like, okay, there's something from that house with the baby. So that night, me and Mum sitting down to eat dinner, I'm like, Mum, was there ever a baby that passed away in the house next door, or, like, you know? And Mum looked at me wide-eyed and she's like, what? I'm like, next door, was there a baby that passed away? She's like, no, I heard you. She's like, but how do you know that? And I'm like, I hear a baby crying in my head. Like, and it turns out that years before I was born, there was a lady who lived in the house. She had a pretty, you know, bad pregnancy, and the child died not long after being born, but it never actually made it back to that house.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was like, oh shit, okay. So, you know, I'm like, well, what do I do? Like, you know, said to Mum, what do I do? Like, I can hear this baby screaming. It's not happy, you know. And Mum's just like, oh, you know, tell it to go towards the light. Like, you know, everything will be all right. Like, you know, tell it can pass over. And I'm like, okay, yeah, rightio. So I sat down, you know, and I had the crying in my head going, you know, and I'm like, everything will be okay. You know, you can move over. Yeah. And it took about 20 seconds or so. And then it was like the cry sort of like, you know, it went from a wail and then like just drawed out like a big wah to nothing. And I never heard the cry again.
Okay, so now I'm starting to change my opinion that I don't think it's the house, and I tend to agree that you obviously have some sight or some gift.
Something, but it hasn't really grown anything, you know. It's always been around the same. Like it's there, but it's not. Mm.
Have you ever done anything to try to cultivate that?
No, I'm scared.
Okay, and that may be why it's staying the same.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll yeah, I'll explain. So we're getting older now. So another chihuahua. My mum's the one that had the frisbee thrown at it.
Yeah.
He follows me up the hallway as well. Now this one though, he was a little soldier. He had epilepsy. So we had to give him glucose every time he had a little epileptic fit. And as he got older in life, he started having more fits, and you know, each one would just absolutely ruin him for a week.
Yeah.
And they kept getting closer and closer. And my mate's mum owned a video shop just up the road at this time, and we'd go, you know, used to go and work for her for $20 cash so we could go and get a drink or whatever. And we go up and we go to work. We were there for a few hours, come back, and Sonny was on me bed, and he was literally waiting like he took his last breath when I walked in that bedroom. He knew he was going, and he waited, and I went up there and I'm like, you know, oh, Sonny, you know, went over and patted him and sat down beside him, and I felt his last breath. And Mum wasn't at home at this time, and, you know, that was her little baby. And it was about 11:30 at night when he passed. So, yeah, I, you know, wrapped him up in a blanket and put him on Mum's bed, rang Mum. She's like, oh, shit, you know, started crying. So she came home first thing in the morning, and we buried him in the backyard. And probably about a week later, he started following me up the hallway, much the same as Taffy. You know,
Did you ever have them both at the same time?
No, it's sort of like there was a little bit of time in between, but they only ever stuck around for, you know, probably about a month, each of them. Sort of like the way I take it was just, you know, letting me know that they're all right.
Yeah.
You know, they're happy. They're all good now. Because they both, you know, they were old when they both died, so yeah, they were sort of running up the hallway after me, which they hadn't done for quite a while. So
they went back to a time where they were healthier.
Yeah,
which seems to be a pretty common report, even not just with pets, but with people as well, that when people see loved ones that have passed, many times they'll see them and not really recognize, because they're in they're a vision of what they were more like in their prime.
They're reverting back to a better time. Yeah. So, yeah. Now the next one here is I've seen, you know, I've heard a lot of people on your podcast and others about shadow people and how they, you know, all doom and gloom.
Yeah.
Well, I like to believe I had a shadow person friend. So, you know, as a lot of teenagers do, we started smoking marijuana thinking we were cool or stupid. I don't know. Turns out to be stupid now, I reckon. But yeah, so me and my mate used to sit. So I had, you know, this was in the same room of when I was a kid and where I'd been dragged. I'd turned that into, you know, the games room. Had a couch in there and a, you know, Xbox and that. And me and my mate were sitting there one day and we're playing Xbox. And we both sort of look up at the doorway and, you know, look at the doorway. It's probably, I'm 6 foot. So, you know, it was probably about 6.5 feet roughly in height. See the head poke around the doorway, you know, and there was two. Now, I know a lot of people say that, like, you know, the Hat Man,
yeah,
how he has the fedora style hat. Well, I was seeing one with like a top hat style, but there was two. There was the top hat style, and then there was just a normal head, but it was just all black. So me and my mate were sitting there, and head pops around, and we both look up, And my mate Chris is like, "Did you see that too? Did you?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, pretty common. And he's like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "That's Steve." I'm like, "Oh yeah, cool. All right. Well, yeah, Steve." So every time, like, we'd be sitting there playing Xbox, and every time we'd see the head pop around, we'd be like, "Hey, Steve," like, we wouldn't move our heads, we wouldn't look. We'd notice it in the peripheral, and every time we seen that head pop around, we'd be like, "Hey, Steve. Hey, Steve." And because we were interacting with it, it seemed to happen more and more. And there was never ever, like, we never got any bad feelings. Like, obviously this was at my house, so I'd be sitting there by myself, and it almost seemed like it was a game. Like, because at the start, he would pop up at the same height, on the same side of the doorway. And I'd be like, sitting there playing Xbox. "Hey, Steve. Hey, Steve." And so then he started changing heights and changing which side of the door he was popping up on. And the freakiest one, though, was when he come from the top down under.
Oh.
I'm like, "Hey, Steve."
Like from the ceiling.
From the ceiling down. And, that was, but, that just seemed to be the game. That was never anything bad, never any,
And would that only happen when you were with that mate of yours that you would?
No. That was like me and him sort of, gave him the name of Steve. But yeah, no, it was by myself. It was with him. It was with other people. So other people, a lot of people don't see it though, because I'd be sitting there, 2 or 3 other people on the same chair, and I'd see it and I'd be like, "Oh, hey, Steve." And they'd be like, "What are you talking about?" Because we had a mate named Steve. My brother's name's Steve.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, "Steve's not here." Like, "Oh, yeah, no. That's another Steve." But not many, like, I don't think it was me and Chris really the only ones who've seen it. So, but.
And again, same house, right?
Same house, yeah. Same house. Yeah.
Interesting. My only shadow person experience was at about 10, and it was outside my the threshold to my doorway to my bedroom, and it scared the hell out of me. It was, there was only myself, my mom, and my dad living in the house, and that silhouette that was standing at the door was neither my mom or my dad. That was scary, and I didn't find out. I never told anybody about it, and I found out years later once I started doing this show. Karen Tatro, who I had done a 2-part interview with, she investigated the Conjuring house. She, as a thank you for having her on the show, she did a reading for me, and she brought up me having a shadow man experience, and there was never any, I'd never talked about it on the show prior to that. There was never anything posted about it. She pulled it right up, and the really interesting thing was she was kind of flabbergasted as to not knowing what it was. She couldn't get a read on whether it was a human spirit or a elemental or something else. She just knew that it really wasn't there to cause any harm, and it usually only showed up when I was in a situation where I had like a lot of questions, there was a lot of things that were like unresolved, which I can't really imagine at the age that I saw it what I would have been dealing with to have unresolved questions. But that was her take on it, and I thought it was really strange that she was able to pinpoint that, having never discussed it prior to that.
Yeah, odd. I'd like to meet someone who can, see what I've seen and maybe give me some more answers or some, clarifications, but hasn't been yet.
Well, I might be able to help point you in the direction of somebody that can help you with that.
The mystical JJ.
See, you are gifted.
I remember your podcast about her, and I'm like, maybe. That was my first thought too. Is that I've thought about like going to do Reiki or something, or going to speak to someone, but I can't do it because whoever it is has to be tough. Like, it's not. They've got to be tough. There's some shit in the background. I'll say that.
Well, I can assure you, I don't think you'd be disappointed. No, she's.
That was my first thought too. Like, maybe she's the one. Maybe with her telling you about where she did the remote viewing for you and told you about that portal.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh shit! Like, yeah, that's gifted. That's.
Yeah, and I'll be the first to admit that my thoughts on people who claim these abilities, you pretty much gotta prove yourself to me, because there's a number of them out there that are just looking to make a buck, and they use some different techniques to fish for information or find things out about you online and stuff like that. She's not on my payroll. I know that she gets a lot of commentary throughout my shows, but that's simply a testament to just how much faith I have in what her abilities are. She's proved it time and time again to me, so I don't think you'd be wasting your time if you reached out to her.
Well, I've thought about it, but as I'm sure there's many other people have reached out to. So
they have, and I can tell you this: she enjoys the hell out of it. It's something she feels that she's doing. She's doing what she was put here to do. Let's put it that way. That's the contract she signed when she decided to come here, and so she's happy to do it.
Oh, I'll have to reach out eventually. And, okay, so we've got the first experience outside of Mum's house. So I think I was like 19, 20-ish. I moved out with a couple of mates, a mate and his girlfriend. And this was probably by far the most mind-boggling. Every night when I'd go to sleep, I would hear children in the back. Like we were in a block of units, so there was like 4 unit blocks side by side, single story house. They were 2-bedroom units. So up the back of them, there was like a huge backyard that spanned the entire length, like no fences in the back. But yeah, every night I'd hear kids singing "Ring Around the Rosie," and that was terrifying.
And
give me bangs and growls any day.
And I mean, I don't, excuse me, I don't know about over there, but Ring Around the Rosie is a very dated game. That's not something that, I'm going to be 58 here this month. Even as a child, I don't remember playing Ring Around the Rosie. I think that was something that was from a time even before that. So
I can remember singing it when I was a kid, but I don't remember the game. But that was almost a nightly experience, and I don't know why, but when it comes to kids and spirits, it's just worse than anything else.
Yeah.
Terrifyingly worse. So same unit, I would also hear talking coming from my mate and his girlfriend's bedroom, and bangs not on the wall but in the wall. Like, so where our bedrooms met, there was, I had a wardrobe, sliding doors on it, and then there was the wall, and then on the other side of in his wall there was another wardrobe. So it was coming from inside the wall, inside the two wardrobes. But it was like, there was only a few bangs. There was only, it's more voices, like, but not that you could make out what it was. It was just muffled, like, you could just hear something. But yeah, I'd ask him, what was going on last night? No, that wasn't us. What are you on about? We were asleep. Oh, well, there. Fair enough. So now that was that. I was there for, a few months in that unit, and the Ring Around the Rosie was almost nightly. It was, I would dread, I'd go stay at other people's houses.
Were you questioning your mental health at all during this time? I mean, I understand that you recognized that you were experiencing things that were happening oddly, that weren't natural. But at any point, did it give you pause and make you think, man, am I kind of cracking up here a little bit? Because I'm having a number of experiences, or were you always pretty resolute in you were experiencing something and your head was right?
Well, due to, like, I had depression, as I said, at 13. So mum put me in, like, I went and spoke to, what are they called?
Therapists?
Yeah, therapy. Like, I went to therapy, I had a couple of different, but it was like, they ended up putting me on, like, because I thought maybe I was, schizophrenic or something as well. But turns out, just depression, and I had suicidal tendencies and all that good stuff to follow along with it. But no, they told me that I didn't have schizophrenia or, anything too major. It was just depression and ADHD too. I was diagnosed with ADHD. So it was mainly just like, my inner dialogue running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Yeah. But no, when it was an external source, like if it was something I was hearing, or I never thought that maybe I was finally losing the absolute plot.
Because the reason I ask is, I've talked to some people that have been like, I questioned my sanity. I thought, am I losing it? But then when I kind of compare that to the experiences I've had throughout my life, it's always been kind of matter of fact. I've never questioned that I was seeing things or experiencing hallucinations, or my mind was playing tricks. I mean, I always felt completely confident in what I was experiencing was actually happening, and I never really questioned myself.
Yeah, no, same. It's yeah. So that was about 20. That would have been about 19 actually, because from about 20 to 24, I kind of fell off the deep end and went and abused drugs and alcohol, and I don't really remember too much happening during that time. It sort of, put a veil over it all, I suppose you could say. But then at 23, 24, I met my partner, and this is where it starts to get weird. So I met my partner, and it turns out she's got the same birth date as my nana. So I think that was another thing of nana there, finding someone to help me out. And we were together for only 3 months before she was pregnant, which is, a lot of people would probably turn around and say, "You stupid dickhead." Well, actually, I had a lot of people tell me that, but, we're here 14 years later, so bite me. So things were very different with this girl. We got together, and I just, the way she was, accepting me for me, because at that stage I was still partially an alcoholic at the start, and I'm like, oh yeah, I could see myself having kids to you, like pretty cool chick, rah rah. Wasn't aiming, okay, let's have a baby. Like, I didn't even have my own life under control. But then she's turned around and she's like, yeah, I want a kid. Okay. Rightio, let's talk about it and let's sit on it. And so I was driving along, and I said, in my head, I'm like, Nana, is having a kid the right thing to do? And, I'm like, give me a sign. And I look up at the clouds, and I see a cloud in the shape of a Winnie the Pooh head. And I'm like, righto, okay, that could be a yes, that could, but I need a clearer sign, and I like, show me a clearer sign. And not bloody, 30 feet away from the size of the Winnie the Pooh head was a cloud in the perfect shape of Y. So I'm like, okay, all right. I have kids for this woman then. Thanks, Nana. So there we are. We're now 14 years later. We've got 2 kids.
Good for you.
But once she got pregnant, we moved out to a place called Fernvale, and it was a brand new house. It was, not right from the very get-go, I'd say. Got to a point where the partner, she couldn't sleep without the ensuite light on. It was just constant, like something was following you, something was behind you, just bad juju. Like, it was just yuck. You almost cut the tension with a knife. And me being me, I've had experiences for a long time. It got to the point where I was running from the kitchen. Like, I'd turn the light off. I'd try and, systematically turn lights on so I could turn the lights off and still have a light on. Otherwise, I'd be running through the kitchen into the bedroom, like through the dining room area, which backed onto the thing. It was just, in that house, we had knives out of the knife block go missing. I had shirts disappear. I'd be in the garage, building a subwoofer box or something, and I'd put a tool down. I'd go inside, grab a drink, come back, that tool was gone. And I'd go, on a frantic, oh, where's this? Go looking for it, come back, and it's exactly where I left it. So, but yeah, then we had the in-laws come and stay. And, I'm talking, like, I've been one to always be open. My experiences are my experiences. If you don't believe them, that's it. Anyway, It doesn't bother me. I will tell you what I've experienced, and you can make up your mind whether to believe it or not. So I was talking to the mother-in-law, and she's sitting there, and, she's like, no, she said she envisioned a man at the front door, just waiting for something. She's like, he was an older man. He was, dressed nicely, but he's just waiting. He's standing by the front door and he's waiting. And I never got nothing like that. But as we were talking about it, there was, so you walk in the front door, and directly to your left was, a second lounge room sort of thing. I just had the computer in there. Then you walk up, there was, the wall for that room, kitchen,
dining room there, and the kitchen behind it, and opposite the kitchen was the main lounge room. Excuse me. So we're sitting in the main lounge room all talking and that, but the way me and the mother-in-law were talking, we could see back down into the first, where I had the computer, into the first lounge room area. And as we were talking, there would have been probably about 3 foot high by 3 foot long black mist, and it darted from where my computer was out the front door. And, like I've sort of, peripheral, looked over, seen that dart out. And, I looked back at the mother-in-law, and she's like, did you see that too? I'm like, yeah, about 3 foot, She's like, yep. So we both seen the same thing. In that was pretty much the only thing I seen there. But we had a walk-in closet in the master bedroom, and it felt like there was a presence pretty much as soon as you entered the walk-in closet. Excuse me. And it just used to sit and watch as we were going to sleep. Very awkward feeling.
Yeah.
But nothing like, no bangs or anything like that.
Had your partner had any kind of experiences prior to her taking up with you?
Yes, but minimal. So, when we first got together, I asked her, I'm like, do you believe in spirits and rah. And she's like, yep. I'm like, okay, good. And according to her, what she had was nothing compared to what happened when we got together. So we were in that house for a year, I believe, and couldn't wait to get out. That was, it was just, mind you, so also in that house that, it was early in the relationship, but it started off real good, but, the more the dreaded feeling, it started to affect her, although she was pregnant as well, so that could have been affecting her too. But she, she became really snappy and, not herself, so to speak.
Did you ever notice any kind of change in your personality throughout any of these things? Did you ever kind of get like a short fuse and seem to act out aggressively or meanly, kind of out of character for yourself?
Actually, like we, we would have a Barney and that, and I'd, leave sort of a few expletives, and I'm not putting up with this shit, and walk away. Yeah. And usually get to the end of the street and feel like, well, okay, that's over and done with.
So once you got out of the house and you started walking away from it, you got enough distance between you and what was going on inside, you came back to
normal, basically. Sort of all the anger was gone there, sort of just washed off.
Did she ever notice, like, when she would leave the house for, to run errands or go grocery shopping or whatever, did she ever notice that when she would leave, that would seem to kind of lift from her?
Yeah. She had stated multiple times that she didn't want to go back to the house. She was doing childcare. Oh, excuse me. She was doing childcare, and we lived 45, 50 minutes away from work where she was working. So if she had to do an open in the morning, which they were opening at 6:30, she was up at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning to, have a shower and get ready and leave. And
as soon as she was, 10 minutes in the car and gone, she was back to her normal self, she said. But yeah, even just knowing that, it's getting close to being back at home, she felt herself change.
Now, was that house, you said it was new, but was it new to you or was it a new build?
A new build, brand new build. We were the first people in there. And it was on old farmland. So, a lot of places these days, they're buying up all the old farmlands. Like, it was semi-rural place. So I'd like to go knock on the door and see if anything's still going on there now.
That'd be interesting. Yeah.
So from there, we moved from there. We went up to Cairns. Nothing much happened there. We're in Cairns for a short time, and then we moved back. So we moved to a place in Loganholme, and this one was very active in the peripheral, and also the moving chairs. So we had the dining room table, and it was a glass top table, and it had the like sort of fake wrought iron backing of the chairs. But every time we'd go to bed, push the chairs in for the table, wake up, and at least one of them would be out. And the way that the lounge room was set up, you had the couch, and the couch was facing windows, and so you could see the reflection from the dining room table in the windows, big floor-to-ceiling windows. And we're sitting there watching TV, and you could see movement, in the peripheral around the table. And to me, it was, 2 kids, and they were playing around, like, over the table or under the chairs, or they're chasing each other around the table and that.
Bring around the rosy.
I hope not. I didn't hear that, thank God. But at this stage, our daughter was a few months old, so we had the playpen set up. Well, not the playpen, just the corner of the room. Had all the kids' toys on it, and as they do, they would start playing by themselves, and they would move. And so one night there, I'm like, let's mess with the baby. Let's put her to sleep before her bedtime. They get in their routines. They know when bedtime is. And I think it was going on winter or something. So, no, it wouldn't have been winter. It would have been summer. Put her to bed at like 6 o'clock when it was starting to go dark, and she didn't go to bed till like 7:30 or something. So I just went and put her in a cot and laid her down, walked over, and I bought this cheap little camcorder from pawn shop. And
it sounded like you said from the porn shop. I was like, what? I mean, it makes sense, but
well,
sorry.
We call them a hock shop over here. So, so I bought the little camcorder, and I'm like, laid the daughter down, and I'm like, let's see what she does. So I had the camcorder set up, and I'm recording her, and she sat up, and she's, looking around the room. She's probably 4 months old at this stage, 5 months old or something. And she's looking around, wasn't crying, wasn't nothing. And me and the partner had spoke, 2 words, and then there was nothing. We're just standing there in silence. And, probably had her in there for about 5 minutes, and then like, all right, turn the light on, go back in, grab her, bring her back outside, lay her down and play with some toys and that. And I'm like, put the memory card into the laptop, and going through listening to it. And unfortunately, I don't have the recording because the external hard drive shit itself. But
but what it captured in there was try and seek us or hide and seek us. But there was a young voice that wasn't mine or the partner's, and it was he's trying to seek us or try and seek us or hide and seek us or something. But I put that to, I'm there with the camcorder trying to look in, and obviously these spirits were in the room hiding.
Well, that had to be unnerving.
Yeah, that was like, it just sort of all put it together though, like seeing the peripheral of kids playing around the table and that, and then hearing that. And it was probably a couple of days later, I had my mum over for dinner, and I was telling mum about it, what was going on. And I showed her the footage, with the voice that we had caught.
Was it clear? Was it like a Class A, or did it?
No, because I couldn't quite figure out what, like. That's why I say, it was either try and seek us, hide and seek us, but it was to do along the lines of finding them. That's what, But yeah, I was telling mum about it, and I'm standing there. I'm in the front of, like, in the doorway of my daughter's room where it was, and it felt like someone come up right to my ear and gone, and that put the shivers down my spine. Like, it was literally like, I don't know if I felt the wind, but I'd say it would have been one of those ones, like, their lips were right up against my ear and did the old Chinese whisper sort of stuff. And yeah, I wasn't having that.
Well, myself as a parent, had I caught something like that on a camcorder in my child's room, I don't know that we would have stayed there much longer. Your natural instinct as a parent is to protect your child, and that would have put me on high alert.
I tend to go by feelings. Like, I can generally get a sense of whether it's good or bad. Gut instinct will usually help me out. Like, pretty quick to judge whether it's not very nice in the room or if it's whatever. Yeah. It's there. It's not harming no one. But yeah, so that was. I ended up going and running a line of salt around the house. So, like, I didn't know quite how to take that one when it was so up in my face, sort of, so to speak, in my ear as you would. Ran a line of salt around the house, and told if you any negative entities can't be past this line, got to leave.
Yeah.
So I'd still see stuff out of the peripheral. So yeah, they obviously weren't too bad. Freaky nonetheless.
Yeah, no kidding.
So yeah, Then I was about 27 when we moved back to Cairns. And the mother-in-law's house, so the house we were in up there, that was all good. We didn't have nothing there, thankfully. But the mother-in-law's house, I got two young sister-in-laws. At this stage, they were like 8 and 11 or something. And they had a bedroom side by side. And I used to, like, I would envision a young girl, old time style. She had the pigtails, the plaited pigtails, and the white long nightgown with the lacy frilly around the cuffs. And she, this young girl that I'd never seen her, but it was just what come to my mind. She's just in awe of the two young sister-in-laws. And she'd just be there watching, obviously she was from an old time, so the technology in that, I think, was, what was intriguing to this young girl.
Yeah.
And then a couple of months later, the mother-in-law had said that the youngest one, who was 8, she had thought she was coming up to her. So the mother-in-law was in the laundry about 10 foot away from where I envisioned this young girl standing, about 10 foot away in the laundry doing laundry. And she's bent over to pick up a basket of washing. And she said she's seen this young hand with white lacy frills like come out towards the basket of washing. And, she said she felt her come up and she just thought it was a young 8-year-old sister-in-law, like, her daughter. And then as the hands come over, she noticed the frills, the lacy frills on the cuff. And so she sort of dropped the bag and sort of screamed and ran away. But I didn't get no bad feelings. It was sort of just is what it is. Yeah. So at that time, my daughter was 2. And there was a graveyard up there in Cairns that got washed away from a flood. And there's one single graveyard left. And the partner, she wanted to go and take photos. So we went down there, and my daughter too, was being carried back to the car when they were leaving. And she's turned around and she's, "Who's that girl? Who's the girl in the grass?" So, and the gravestone there for the one single gravestone was for a young girl.
So your daughter was seeing things as well.
Yeah, and still does.
Really? How old is she now?
She's 12 now, nearly 13. So it's not as frequent as, as what I had when I was her age.
Thankfully.
But my thoughts to that was that, I don't know whether, like, I'm pretty sure that she's seen a young girl before I envisioned her in my mother-in-law's house. So I'm thinking that she followed, because when they went to take photos, there was the 2 sister-in-laws, the mother-in-law, my partner, and my daughter. So when they went to take photos, my daughter had seen the young girl. I don't know, maybe she followed back, seen all these young girls and followed them back.
Yeah.
And decided to hang around for a bit. But yeah. So that was mainly just a feeling and a vision in my head. I never actually seen anything there. But just uncanny, I envisioned the young girl to have frills. Yeah. The mother-in-law seen the frills, whether like, because I think I'd told the mother-in-law what I envisioned her wearing. So whether the mother-in-law just put it into what she had seen or not, I don't know. But
right.
Yeah. So we moved back to Brisbane. We actually, so we left Cairns because there was no more family up there. So we decided to come back to Brisbane, and ended up staying back with me mum in the family house.
Okay.
So my kids, at that time, I had a son as well now. He was only a toddler, and they went and stayed in the same room that I was dragged from. My daughter's bed was actually in the same position, but thankfully nothing bad happened to them. But the house definitely created some excitement. We'd put my son to bed, and we'd be like, our bedroom was beside his. So we put him to bed, close the door. A couple of hours would go by, and then we'd start hearing his voice. Like, oh, yeah, okay. Jason's awake. Go open the door. He's still asleep. Like, that was his voice, though. Like, close the door,
Yeah, next day, pretty much same thing. Like sometimes you'd hear toys drop, you'd hear toys fall off the bed, you'd hear movement, and his voice to a T, like, you know, his little murmurs, and he was only like a year and a half old or something. So, you know, it wasn't clear speech.
Right.
But it was him. Open the door, and he's still passed out, fast asleep. It's like, okay, that's not cool. Like, that's, you know. And then the partner started, you know, she'd be in the kitchen cooking, and she would feel our daughter behind her. So she'd, you know, go to turn around, like, you know, she'd, in the peripheral, she'd see a young girl pretty much exactly looking like my daughter, turn around, and my daughter's not there. And once she told me that, I'm like, yeah, righto, okay. And not long after, I started getting the same thing. You know, you'd see a young girl in the peripheral behind you in the kitchen, turn around thinking that it was our daughter, turn around, nothing there. You know, my daughter's out the back or, you know, in the room or something. But yeah, like to a T, it was almost doppelganger style, you know.
So your impression of it was that it was taking the form of your daughter?
Yeah, and the voice, like my son in the bedroom. You know, my son wasn't talking in his sleep or anything. And like, you know, because when my son was asleep, there would be toys being played with. You could hear the toys being played with, and as, you know, toddlers do, they're murmuring and talking to themselves. Then you'd hear toys banging that, and open the door, and he's on the bed fast asleep. So yeah, it was that wasn't too nice. That was very off-putting.
Yeah.
So thankfully nothing bad came of all that, but but yeah, so then in the same house, so my nana, she had dementia. She died when I was 13. I can remember from like the age of 8, I was referred to as boy. You know, she'd be saying to me, Mum, what's the boy doing? What's the boy into? Don't let the boy touch that, you know. And, oh, boy, what are you doing? Nothing, Nana, you know, rah, rah. And that's, you know, being young, Mum would be like, oh, I'm going to Nana's. Do you want to come? No, I don't want to go to Nana's. That's boring, you know. Yeah, so time lost I regret now, but, you know, we can't change that. So here I am. I'm, you know, early 30s at this stage, probably 30, 31 or something. I just started a new job, you know, talking to a few people, and somehow the grandmother thing become a subject, and told a few people within the week, you know, oh yeah, my nana called me boy. She didn't know my name, rah, rah. And yeah, I had a dream one night, and my nana was in a car, and she had her hair pulled back. She was wearing a white like tank top. She was sitting in this creamy car, and I can remember from her house, the driveway had, like, you know, green hedges along the driveway, always, you know, fairly well kept. And she's sitting in a car in that driveway from her house, and she's called me by name, Robert. Come over, you know. Yes, Nana. Just want to say I love you. And then drove away. And, you know, I woke up and like, whoa, you know. And it took me a minute to realise that, you know, because I'd been saying to everyone that she'd called me boy, she, you know, I take it that she come to me in my dream to call me by my name to let me know
She knew who you were.
that she knows who I am. She knows my name, and, you know, that
she was sorry that she couldn't back when she was alive. So yeah, that, you know, and I'm there thinking, and as we were saying before, you know, reverted back to better times when people passed or animals passed.
Yeah.
So my nana didn't actually get her license until she was in her 60s.
Oh, really?
And the car that I'd seen in a dream was the car that she'd gotten her license in. But she had only drove for about 3 years. I would have been a baby when she crashed the car and stopped driving. So I had no way of knowing that she drove an Austin, you know, like creamy beigey baby poo color car. And I told my mum the next day, and instantly my mum just started bawling her eyes out. She's like, that's amazing. Like, she's like, that was the car that, you know, and the white singlet was like, you know, Nana's go-to before she started losing her mind and other people started dressing her. That was, you know, her attire, like sort of cargo-like pants and a white, like, tank top sort of, yeah.
Well, that was a nice little gift you got.
Oh, that was awesome. That was, yeah. So that was definitely one of the better ones.
Yeah, you need to be thankful for those.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. So, and then from there we move just around the corner into our own house, and this is where it all starts. This is where it gets bad. This is so, you know, living a life without a father, or, you know, raising kids of my own, not knowing, you know, never had a dad, so I was only doing the best that I could. Always wondering, you know, what to do, and, you know, then I was like, you know, along the lines of my life, I'd tried to find out, you know, information, and people didn't want to tell me, you know, sort of a sore, touchy subject. Righto, just carry on with life, I guess. But then I got to the point where I'm like, no, you know, I've got to find out something. I've got to know what's going on. Excuse me. So when the subject of my father come up, you know, and not knowing him, it was a lot of I would always turn around and be like, for all I know, he could be dead. For all I know, he could be dead. And I'd said that for as long as I can remember. So my father also had a daughter that wasn't to my mum that he had care of. So there was another sister out there as well that I didn't know. So I found a group on Facebook, put up, you know, because along of him running away when he found out that mum was pregnant, he also changed his name. So it made things very difficult. So I put up, you know, who he was, where he lived, back when he was known. Excuse me. So I had this girl reach out to me, this lady, and she told me that I was spelling his name wrong, and that she had some, you know, some bad news to tell me. And, you know, he was never anything to me, so I'm like, yeah, rightio. So she rang me up and she told me that, yeah, he was dead. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. She also told me that he was an absolute piece of shit of a human being, and he did things to this girl, and when she was younger, she told her mum he got charged by the police upon being released on bail for some stupid reason. Anyway, he was released on bail. He loaded up his car and drove away and killed himself. I don't know how he killed himself. I don't really care. But as I said, you know, at the start, it turns out that he killed himself 7 days before my 10th birthday, exactly 7 days. And I had always said that my stuff started when I was like 9 or 10 years old.
Yeah.
7 days before my 10th birthday, he kills himself. And here's my negative attachment. He is the reason why I always feel like there is something behind me. Because he always denied to my mum that, that I was his. My mum, if I'm not that I'm a religious person and believe in demons or devils or angels or nothing, but if there was ever an angel, it's my mum's it. She is everything and all in one. So she tried to do her best and hide the fact that back in the 80s, child out of wedlock and whatnot, and but yeah, she definitely wasn't one to be running around with multiple partners. And he was adamant that not mine. So he ran away, killed himself, and then he comes to play. So when I found all this out, everything started going to absolute shit. So my missus, in the house that we were in, she could not walk under that house for more than a minute. It's a 2-story house. The laundry is underneath the house. And she'd send me a video of her after going underneath that house, and like her hands, like she wouldn't have been able to hold a cup of water. She was shaking. She was, excuse me for a sec. Yeah, she didn't like being under the house. She didn't want nothing to do with it. And it started affecting her in every motion. Like she was snapping. She was, he had figured out, when I say he, my father, the negative attachment, had figured out that he couldn't affect me the way that he wanted to, so he's changed onto her. She was a female. She was small. She's 5 foot tall. She's all of 50 kilos, which is nothing, So he's gone and attached himself to her. And she changed immensely to who she was. She was, snapping and angry and, sad and depressed. And so one of the things too, I always wanted to get some white sage and I could never find it, I didn't want to order it online. I wanted to go in person and buy it, and so it happened to be that, I put up on a post on Facebook, and my sister's like, there's a tobacconist around the corner from you that's got it right now. So I'm like, sweet, cool, speaking to the partner about going and getting it, days beforehand, she was all for it. And as soon as I found out where I could go and get it from, and I could go and get it right then and there, she lost her shit. I don't want that effing shit in my house, blah, blah, blah. Like, she snapped. Oh. Like, yeah. And I'm like, whoa, like, yesterday, you want it, this is it, rah, rah. I didn't listen. I went and got it anyway. And I come back, and the look on her eye when I come back and I had this white sage in my hand, like, if looks could kill. It was pure hatred. And so I've lit the white sage up, I went and watched some videos about how to do it, and went and lit the white sage up, and went through the house, and then I put the sage over me, banishing all negative energy and that. And she was on the couch, like, holding her head. Said she had the biggest migraine, the biggest headache, and it was, pounding from the inside out. And so got her outside, and I was saging her off, and I had the sage on her for about 15 seconds before she's like, no, stop. Like, she was just about to spew. No energy, just She sat down, like, we're both smokers. She sat down, had a smoke, head in her hands, like, just drained of all energy. So upon this, I took it upon myself, knowing that, she didn't like it underneath the house. So obviously that's where he was residing in. I went under the house and, I basically did the thing that you're not meant to do when it comes to spirits and, provoke them and torment them and call them out. Well, I went down there and I told him, I know who you are, Tony, you piece of shit. You can't do nothing. You're weak, you're this, you're that, get out, leave us alone. And I just so happened to have my phone recording too. But as I'm telling him, you got to leave. You can't do nothing, be gone, leave me, leave my family alone. I get this white flash on my phone. Now, I can put a thing up in the Discord, but it's a recording of a recording because I've tried to slow it down to catch the start of the white flash, but I never can. Like, it is that quick and it runs, charges at the phone, one white flash and it's gone. But I also noticed too in the recording that the camera had a hard time focusing. Like, it was always in and out of focus. And, but yeah, I went down there, I confronted him. I told him I know who he is. I know what he's about. The game's up, I basically put a light on your shadow. We know that you're there, you're hiding in the dark, you can't do shit. Yeah.
So have you ever given any consideration to the fact that, or the possibility that, and in no way, shape, or form am I trying to say that maybe your dad wasn't that horrible of a person and he was, but from the standpoint of, if he was oppressed, if he had an entity, a dark oppression that was attached to him, and after his death, that attachment moved generationally to you. Again, I'm not trying to say that, what your dad did was a bad thing. You got somebody, in a bad way, and then he took off, and that's a terrible thing to do. That is a piece of shit. I agree. But I think more times than not, when you talk to somebody who has any insight into these things, that human spirit is usually being acted upon by something themselves, and I think there is something to a generational type oppression that can follow, whether it's by a curse or whether it's by just its natural mode of desire to rip the happiness out of some family's life for whatever reason. Why they were targeted, I don't know, but I wonder if that might be a possibility as well, that it may not necessarily have been your dad, but the same force that was oppressing him.
Well, it very much could have been. But I've definitely noticed that since I've called him out, and told him that the jig's up, we know what's going on, we know who you are, you can't do nothing, From what I was told too, about him, he was not one for confrontation unless you're a female. So, by me being an adult male now and confronting him, he's sort of run away with his tail between his legs. But in doing that, we haven't had much of anything since then, and that was quite a few years ago.
Oh, that's good.
So he's like, in saying that though, I can still feel that there is, he's just further back in the shadows now because he knows that, can't sit there and pull strings and do things because I know what's going on. I've woken up. I realized
your wife, she responded well to that afterwards.
Yeah.
Good.
So the next day she was, the house was a lot lighter. There was not so much negative feeling in the house. I could actually give her a good, saging. So, yeah, it definitely come a lot better after all that.
Good.
So, that was that. That was, that was sort of the lead up, the culmination of finding out, just what that bad feeling was that I basically carried my whole life.
Yeah.
So then I was at work. It was around the same time. One of my young work friends, he had a friend who killed himself. Young kid, in the despairs of depression, ended up taking the worst way out, thinking that, nothing was going to get better. He killed himself, and my mate come to me and he's like, oh, you said that you've, had experiences and rah. I'm like, yeah, what's going on? So they used to smoke weed. And my mate would rock up to go see, his mate's mum and see how she was doing. And there was the constant smell of weed all around. And he's like, oh, do you think that's him? Do you think that's him? And I'm like, yeah, more than likely, little signs, the littlest signs just to let you know that he's around and he's there and rah. My mate's like, yeah, like he's a bit skeptical. And when I was talking to him, I had my phone on my lap, didn't have my hands on my phone. And, I'm talking to him. I'm like, it's just little signs, just, and instead of like, no, that's because of this or that's because of that, like trying to debunk it, sort of, so to speak, just think, oh, well, that could have been, open your mind up to it and you might get an answer.
Right.
I looked down at my lap and my torch is on my phone.
Oh, the light was lit?
The light on my phone was on. My phone was locked. It was on my lap. My hands were nowhere near my phone. There's quite a few steps. I got a Samsung. There's quite a few steps to turn a torch on. So, yeah, I've looked down at my lap and I pulled it up and I'm like, dude, my light's on. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, who are we talking about? Telling you that there's signs. Here's a sign for you. He's like, no way. I'm like, just, yeah, open your eyes, open your ears, have a think.
Yeah.
And
that's, I preach that in almost every episode. Keep an open mind, use critical thought. Sometimes a chair is just a chair. Sometimes it's not.
It's not. Yeah, exactly right. So, yeah, from there, then we were living at a place called Springfield then, and that was a very calm house. Every night we'd go to bed, we would hear a cup or a bowl or something, be put onto the bench, sort of like it was cleaning up after itself. Don't know what it was, but there was, if not every night, it was every second night there was a knock on the bench. We had a bowl actually fall off the bench once. All four of us were in the lounge room, and there was a bang in the thing, and the next minute there's a bowl on the floor. And at that stage, I also had to go for knee surgery. I'd torn my meniscus, so I had to go for knee surgery. And thanks to my younger years, and ADHD, addictive personality, and they give you terrible pain pills that I don't like after surgeries. And I went as long as I could without taking them, knowing what I'm like.
Yeah.
And yeah, the inevitable happened really. I was taking them for pain, and then I wasn't taking them for pain. And one night I you know, I was still on crutches, you know, like I could have made the excuse that I was taking them for pain, but, you know, I'm more honest than that. Like, you know, the pain wasn't that bad, but it was, you know, purely for selfish reasons of taking the pills. And I took too much. I had 3 tablets one night and I was still on crutches and almost fell over and, you know, destroyed all the work that had just been done on my knee. Luckily, I didn't. I hobbled myself back to bed and laid down on the bed and I, you know, was sort of in a wave, and I can't tell you what it was, but I can tell you that Nana was there yet again. I can vividly remember my Nana in the same clothes, but it wasn't a pleasant experience. She was giving me the scolding of a lifetime. I don't remember what she said, but I woke up and I knew I'd done wrong.
Yeah.
And Nana was there to tell me so. Now, even though she'd been dead for, you know, 20-something years, it didn't feel very well knowing that I had, you know, made my Nana disappointed even though she was dead. And sort of, you know, hit home like, what are you doing, dickhead? You know, leave me alone.
Was that enough to stop?
Yeah.
Good for you, man.
Like, I you know, I knew I shouldn't have been, but they're there. Like, you know, it was sort of I didn't want to bring them home because, you know, although I haven't been an addict, well, I haven't been in addiction for years, you know, I'm always an addict in my eyes. It's only one slip away to ruin a lifetime of good work to, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, definitely to, you know, stay away, throw them in the bin.
Good for you.
Get rid of it. And yeah, take the spiritual reaming from Nana. So yeah,
Nana sounds like she was a badass.
Oh yeah, you know, Nana was a riveter in the World War II. She was riveting the planes together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So both her and Pop, World War II. Pop was a gunner. Nana was a riveter, so, you know, she wasn't shy. She wasn't afraid of hard work. She was, you know, Mum tells me that, you know, that Pop was the softy and Nana was the one who used to keep him in line. So, yeah. So that's pretty much it. Like, apart from that, you know, my daughter said that, like, we bought her this little, little dresser makeup corner cabinet thing. Had mirrors, 3 mirrors, so you can get all the angles.
Yeah.
And that had to be covered nightly because there was apparently a shadow standing in front of it.
Oh, really?
Oh, actually, I almost forgot. Yeah, in saying that, you know, with the shadow person, you know, I told my daughter, like, you know, I've always been honest with my kids, like, you know, you're probably going to see shit just because of what I've been through. Like, you know, there's, you know, if you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. But there's good chance that you probably. And my daughter one night, you know, she was getting all like, oh yeah, you know, like getting all cocky and, you know, a bit smart assery. She's like, oh, you know, and I took it as, you know, like I'm when it comes to spirits, I feel you've got to be respectful. Apart from my father, you got to be respectful because they have a reach much further than you know or want to know. So if you're not respectful, you're going to cop the brunt end of it. And I took it as her being a bit disrespectful one night. And I was actually talking to her about Steve, you know, my friendly shadow person.
Yeah.
And she was starting to be a bit disrespectful and rah-rah. And I'm like, no, you've got to knock this shit off now because you're playing a game with things you don't want to play games with. And she didn't. And within seconds, bam, I was furious. I was ropeable. And I'm, you know, slamming the table and like, nah, like just anger out of nowhere. Like, you know, I'm a dad. I'm, you know, knock your shit off. Like, you know, but this was totally different. And it was intense. It was, you know, out of the blue, no warnings. I told her, no. And among talking about Steve, my friendly shadow person, next minute this anger and curiosity come, and it scared the absolute shit out of her. It scared the shit out of the partner. It scared the shit out of my son. And I was shocked, and it lasted for about 30 seconds. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, what the hell was that? And then it hit me that, me classing Steve as a friend, Steve has ultimately jumped into me and shown her that, this isn't a game. This is what can happen. You're a little girl. Let's have some respect. And ever since then, she's had a bit more respect.
Well, that's good. Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, my friend, that takes us right to 2 hours, and that's quite a laundry list of things that you've had going on in your life. Kudos to you for maintaining a progressive and a healthy outlook on all of it, because I think at some point, a lot of people, they start to question where their head's at when they're having things like this happen.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that things have seemed to taper down. I like to think that your friend Steve is there for some good. But again, even though I preach everything that's dark doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. The old Catholic teachings of my youth, they come creeping in, and it still is kind of a hard one to say. If it's a dark mass, it's probably not good. I do argue that, and I try not to let that creep in, but it does at times. So I hope.
Yeah, that's it. But I now am on my neck here. I wear tourmaline and obsidian, which helps keep the negatives at bay.
Yep, I've got some sitting right in front of me here.
Yeah, it's we've got it all around. It is everywhere. It is a necessity.
One of my listeners was nice enough to send this little vial that has some specific oils, and there's small chunks of obsidian in that as well. Do they work? You know what? I'm not going to say they don't.
Well, I would attest that they do. There's been some times where, I've been laying there in bed and not so much like, I've never had, the bloody sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
I've never had that. Like, I've always been a side or a stomach sleeper. So from what I've read, back sleepers generally get sleep paralysis. Yeah. And then the link to, the not breathing. I
Sleep
forget what that's called.
Yep.
Yeah, that one, there seems to be a bit of a coincidence between them two. Not saying that it is or it isn't, but
it does seem to come up in a lot of the articles about sleep apnea. Here's the thing: if your breathing is being interrupted during your sleep, that means that there is a period of time between your breaths that your brain is not getting the amount of oxygen that it should be during normal breathing, and your brain is already in a different mode because you're asleep. And if you are starving of oxygen because of the breathing issue that you have, it only makes sense that, at some point, all of that is going to have a reaction. And, I'm overweight. I don't sleep on my back, but I have woke on my back twice now where I was not able to move. One, I was waking up from a nightmare. I was trying to scream, but I couldn't get anything out. It was just, my mouth wouldn't even open, and my left arm was out to my side, and I was in a waking mode. I could see what was going on. I looked over at my hand. I could recognize that I could not move my arm, and that was pretty much the extent of it. It was a terrifying thing. I didn't like it at all. I'm I don't like being held down. I'm a pretty good sized guy, so that doesn't happen very often. But I did not like that at all. And it's unfortunate that people have to deal with that phenomenon. But I think, I think the truth of it is that is something that is a physiological reaction to, that switch not being switched right in your brain while you're sleeping or trying to wake in conjunction with sleep apnea. So,
yeah. But yeah, as I was saying, there's been times there where I've been, laying on my stomach, sort of with my back facing towards the door and the rest of the bedroom. And I can feel negative, don't roll over, don't look at it. There is something that, it's just lay there. But then I'll grab my big chunk of obsidian, and hold my obsidian and fall asleep. And, as soon as I grab the obsidian, it tends to, keep the such negative feelings away. So,
I mean, those things have been used in civilizations throughout history for thousands of years. The crystals, healing crystals, specific types of rocks. There's got to be something to it. It's not all mumbo jumbo, and there's got to be something to it. So,
well, even if it's a placebo and it works, if it's a placebo that makes you think it's doing something, and it gives you that feeling, is it doing something?
That's a very good point.
So, yeah, I'll continue to use it, and I'll continue to. Actually, my friend who I was talking to about, whose friend who died, he moved into a new house, and there had apparently been a suicide within the family that was staying there beforehand. So his parents owned the house, and people who were there renting it. Apparently, there was a suicide from their son, who was in the army, and then when the parents of the deceased son moved out, and my mate and his parents moved back in, he said, going up to the toilet one night, and the toilet roll just started flinging off toilet roll at 100 mile an hour. Doors slamming and that. And he's like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? So I made him a necklace with, some obsidian and some other stuff on there. Yeah. And he said, he took it home. I told him, because I had made it. So I'm a firm believer, you got to have the right mindset when you're making it too. You're putting your intentions and your feelings into it. I said, look, I've made it. I've tried to put my best intentions and, but take it home. I gave him a selenite stick to cleanse the crystals. I told him, take it here. Here's a selenite stick and a necklace. Take it home, put it put the selenite on it, let it recharge. Then you grab it and you put your intentions into it, and and then wear it. And he said he felt amazing. It's also kept the things at bay. So
that's awesome. That is awesome. Well, my friend, we're 2 hours and 10 minutes into it. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I really am. I'm thrilled that you reached out to me. I'm beside myself that you're part of the Discord community, and I appreciate taking the time to do this. I know it's a perfect time. I used to there for a while. I was thinking that this was going to be trying to coordinate time wise was going to put one or the other of us at a very inconvenient time, but mid late evening for me, and mid-late morning for you. So
works out perfect.
Worked out really well. So
no worries. Well, thanks for giving me the opportunity and the platform to do so.
Well, I appreciate you. I'm sure the listeners are going to love hearing from you. I look forward to seeing you in Discord again. I will let you know when this is going to air so that you can let all your friends and family know that you're going to be on.
And not listen to it myself because of my voice.
You know, that's funny because, you know, I've had people throughout my life tell me, man, your voice, you really should be on the radio. You really should be on the radio. And I was like, I never bought it, you know, and even deciding to do a podcast, I did it even though I don't like my voice, you know, and when I hear myself play back, you know, I have to listen to myself in my headphones while I'm talking to you. I have to listen to myself when I go through the editing process to, you know, get out the dead air or the bangs or the coughs or whatever. And then I always listen to the episode once it airs, because then I listen to it and try to put myself in the perspective of being a listener and see, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? What could I have done better? You know, just to try to keep myself on the right track. And till this day, you know, I've had so many people comment on my voice, and till this day, I'm like, man, I don't know. I don't get it. I don't understand what you people see in the voice, but apparently they're right and I'm wrong. So
that self-image thing, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
When it comes to you and yourself, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, my friend, take care of yourself, and by all means, hopefully nothing else gets stirred up now that you've decided to talk about everything. I have had some people tell me that once they decided to go on a show and talk about it, it does kind of stir things up a little bit for a while. Hopefully that doesn't happen for you.
No, I said that to the partner the other day. I'm like, I wonder if it's going to activate. You know.
And maybe nothing. You know, I mean, the one main big issue that I think you took care of is probably still hiding in the corner there, being the little man that he is. So
Exactly.
All right, my friend.
No worries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Do me a favor. When I end the recording, leave your browser open, because there's going to, basically what's happening is your video and your audio is uploading to the cloud from your computer. So there'll be a countdown. It'll tell you when everything is complete. So just leave your browser up so that everything can upload. And then when it does, I'll be able to download it here. All right, sir. Thank you.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers. We'll talk to you. On the right-hand side somewhere on your screen should say, like, finalizing upload. It'll have my name, your name, and it'll say complete, or it'll show a progress bar. Actually, mine shows both yours and mine are already complete. So
yeah, upload complete, or recordings have been successfully uploaded.
Yes, sir. Perfect.
Very good.
Rob, thanks so much, man. And honestly, it's a pleasure having you in my community. I really appreciate you listening to the show. It's amazing to me that the show gets to all the places that it does. You know, that's just it's such a cool thing, you know, to.
Well, all the credit goes to you, mate. You know, you give the people the platform without the ego and the you know, like you welcoming, you listen, you know, you offer insight without coming across as a dick, like, you know, some other podcasts.
Yeah.
So, you know, like I've listened to many a podcast. Like, I'm a welder, so I get to listen to podcasts for 8 hours a day.
You know, and there's many of like, you know, it's like, oh yeah, like, you know, I want to tell my story, like, you know, there's you know, there's a bit to it, but it's like, oh no, then I've got to go and do this, and you know, then just yeah. But when it comes to you, like, so the thing with you, I was listening to you for a bit, and then there was, you know, there was a period where you did quite a few Bigfoot, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm over the Bigfoot for now. I'm going to go and listen to something else. But upon going to listen to something else, you're like, you know, I had you followed on Spotify, and it was probably a couple of months, probably 2 months or so. And then I'm like, oh, what was that? What was that podcast? I went into my, you know, to who I was following, and you were gone.
Oh, really?
I'm like, where's it gone? Like, you know, so then I was, you know, trying, I for the life of me could not remember uncomfortable. I'm like, you know, was it unexplained? Was it unacknowledged? Is it this, that, and everything else? And I had shared to the missus the episode of the Dinner with a Witch.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, but it didn't come to me straight away until I eventually remembered. And then I went into the you know, the Facebook messages and seen the links, and I'm like, uncomfortable, fucking go back and watch, you know.
Yeah, it's strange. You know, I had a flurry of Bigfoot stuff. You know, Bigfoot for me is a favorite. I really, Bigfoot is one of those things that I hold near and dear to my heart, the subject. But I don't press just for Bigfoot stories, you know, and it's strange because I went through a period where a lot of the shows were about Bigfoot, and then it was all of a sudden it took a turn, and now it's gone to more, you know, like ghost stuff and spirituality, spiritual awakenings, stuff like that. So, you know, I go with what comes to me, and hopefully there's something out there for everybody, and
go with the flow, take it as it comes.
Yep. So it's been a wild ride, man. I tell you, going from my first episode that got I think 30 listens over the course of the first 4 weeks, you know, it wasn't much. And the God's honest truth is, I did not foresee this getting past episode 10 or 12 maybe, you know, before I was just like, okay, nobody's listening, and you know, I gave it a hell of a shot, but it's just not working. But I've had steady growth every month for 2 years. So, you know, that's
only going to keep going. I can attest to that. Like the way you go about your podcast and the way you do it, like, you know, it's easy to listen to. Like, you know, I've got a bloody earbud in my ear for, you know, roughly 10 hours of the day.
Yeah.
Every day. And there are some podcasts where, you know, you can't listen to 15 minutes worth, and it's like, no, get me something else. This is. But no, they're like, you know, I like the way you do it. I like the way you treat your guests, and, you know, yeah, everything you do. I
appreciate that. I really do. It's just been a pleasure, man. You know, to have started this that late in life. You know, I started when I was 55. Man, if I knew now back then, I could only imagine where we'd be by now. But hopefully we'll get there. I think
things only come to you when you're ready for it.
Yeah, that is a true statement. So you're right. It's happened at the right time, and it's a good thing.
And I'm sure you'll continue to grow leaps and bounds, no doubt.
I appreciate that. Keep listening, man. I got more good stuff coming. So
for sure.
I thank you for your time. Give that family a hug and keep them safe, man.
Always.
All right, my friend. We'll talk.
Always. Thanks again, mate.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. I hope you've enjoyed hearing from Rob tonight. My thoughts go out to him and his family. I hope that his decision to discuss these things doesn't stir things up for him and his wife again. Please head over to patreon.com/uncomfortablepodcast770 and see if there are any membership levels that appeal to you. Don't forget to pick up the Uncomfortable Discord server in the show notes below. Again, make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, both at Uncomfortable Podcast 65. If you've had a story or experience that you would like to have aired on this show, please get a hold of me at contact.uncomfortable@gmail.com. Make sure to share the show any way you can. That's what grows a podcast like this. Share it with your friends, family, coworkers. That's the main thing you can do to help continue to grow this show and get it out in front of more people that will love what we're doing. Thanks for joining me. I will see you next week. And as always, stay uncomfortable, my friends.